in the 4th chapter of 1 John, and we are taking up a subject that John has spoken of 2 times before. It is the subject of love. Love is a subject that we often bounce around. Certainly it's in the media, it's in our songs, it's in our films. It is a well-known subject. The world seems to have their opinions on what love should look like and exactly what love is. We're about to read a passage that defines love from a biblical perspective and gives us a true understanding of the nature of love. Love is one of those words that gets bounced around an awful lot and gets misused. We say we love our children and we say we love our dog. I don't know if we love them on the same level. Sometimes we do. That's a little scary. We say we love our car. We say we love our husband. Why do we use love like that? Do we really mean it on the same level? It is a word that sometimes, because it's so overused, somehow has lost its meaning. So this morning, this text will hopefully give us a true understanding, a richer understanding of the genuine understanding of biblical love. Just a reminder of what is going on, the reason for this book. We picked this up before Christmas, and so now that we're back into it, just a quick review on things. Verse 13 of chapter 5, which we've not been into chapter 5, but he very plainly tells us that the book is written so that you might know that you have eternal life. The reason he is writing is so that the believers, the readers, would have a knowledge that truly they are in him. How would they know this? He has given them a test. And he has given them a test in a variety of ways, not the least of which is a doctrinal test. He's asked these questions. What is your understanding of sin? If you say you have no sin, the truth is not in you. What is your understanding of Christ? Do you know who Christ is and where he has come from? Your understanding of these things and your belief of these things give evidence that the Spirit of God has borne life in you. He's also given a moral test through the book. This is the moral test. Do you demonstrate obedience to Christ? Do you understand what it is to submit to him and put your own desires to death? Is he first in your life? Are his commands important to you? Do you desire to live righteously? There's another moral test. Do you demonstrate a love for the brethren? And this subject of love, under this moral test, John has tackled this now. This will be the 3rd time that he's come around to this subject to discuss this issue under the moral heading of love. John has told us previously in this book that love demonstrates that we are in fellowship with others. This is an evidence that we are truly born of the Spirit of God when we walk with others in love. True love demonstrates that we are in fellowship with God. And now this time, he's looping around for the 3rd time, and this will be all the way actually into the end of chapter 4. We'll pick this up again next week. We'll just begin this subject. But he will now demonstrate that love demonstrates God is in fellowship with us. This is ultimately the purpose of this little book. So you remember last week, he told us, he warned us to believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. So one of the ways that we can test these spirits is by their actions. And the action that he constantly comes back to as a test is love. But what kind of love? We all seem to know some measure of love. I'd like to speak under the heading this morning of just the simple question, why love? Why is love the test? What does love look like? Why should we love the way he's called us to love? So let's jump in to chapter 4, verse 7, and begin this passage that I previously read to you earlier in our service. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. So right off the top, we learn a couple things about love that might not be just from our own intuition. Love is from God. Let us love one another because love is from God. God is the source of true love. This might sound like a simple thing to say, but it's good for us to be reminded that this is not a human construct. Love is not for us to define. Love is not about our emotions. Not is love about our feelings. Love does not come based on what we think. Love is not subject to our opinions. Love is from God. So God defines what love is, and God defines how love should be, how love should look, how love should be lived out in our lives. It's not up to us to decide how we should love. It's not us to decide what love should look like. Well, I have feelings for them. I like them more than them. I want to do that for them. Is that love just because you think it is? God defines love. Love is from God. That's an important point. Secondly, he points out to us that it demonstrates our true connection to God. When we love with the kind of love that God shows, this kind of love demonstrates that the only way you can produce this kind of love is if God by his Spirit lives in you. This is in a sense a supernatural love. It is not a natural love. It is not a human love. It is love on a different level. It demonstrates our true connection. Anyone who loves has been born of God. This kind of love, God's love, is unique. And it demonstrates that God himself has put this love in your heart. If this love is not there, this kind of God's love, it's an indication you don't know him. Anyone who does not love does not know God. This is not anybody who doesn't love their pet or doesn't love their children or anybody who doesn't love their family, doesn't love whatever. This is not what that is. Anybody can do that. This is anyone who doesn't love with the kind of standard of love that God has, his definition of love. Then anyone who does not love like that does not know God. Why? Because God is love. What he has just done in verse 8 is exactly the reverse of what he said in verse 7. He says exactly the same reasons in the opposite way. He has said them just backwards. Anyone who does not love does not know God. Loving demonstrates your connection to God. The source of true love is God because God is love. Verse 7, verse 8, it's the same thing, two different ways. And he's emphasizing it to make the point. This love is unique love. It is supernatural love in a sense. It is God's love. And anybody who doesn't have this love does not know God. Now I just have to park here for a few moments on this little phrase, God is love, because this is probably the best known, if not certainly the best known phrase in the New Testament. I would say probably in the entire Bible. You can walk down the street and just about ask anybody, what is God like? And they would tell you, well, I've heard somewhere, God is love. What does that mean? And this is an important point to us because this is ultimately the crux of this text in a lot of ways. People read this text, God is love. They often read it as if it was an equal sign, that God is love. So wherever love is God. So if I'm loving you, I'm making a pie for my neighbor, I'm shoveling your driveway, which by the way, I'd be happy for you to do today for me, then God is love. In other words, if you do something loving, somehow you're connected to God. If you do something in love, then somehow, some way, this is from God. We could reverse that and say love is God. Is that really good theology? Does that really make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. In fact, this is how most people perceive that this phrase is meant, but this is not what this phrase means. I mean, it's very simple. You could very easily see how this doesn't work if you say grass is green, 3 words with an is in the middle. Grass is green, but green is not grass. Everything that's green is not automatically grass just because it's green. God is love. But everything that's love is not automatically God just because it's love. There is a particular kind of love. One of the reasons that we use this phrase, or John uses this phrase, God is love, is because God's attributes are so closely linked to love. All of his attributes are so intimately entwined in who God is that in essence you could say that God is love itself. But in essence, this is the very same thing that Jesus did when he made comments like this. Jesus said, I am the way. What does that mean? Jesus is so connected to being the way to God that in essence he just declares, I'm the way itself. I am the truth. Truth is not something you see in a person, but he's so intimately connected with truth. He is the one who invented what is right and what is wrong. He is the one who decided what is absolute, perfect, pure truth. He's so intimately connected to truth that you would say he's in the embodiment of truth itself. I am the life. Why is he the life? Because he's the one who created life. In him all things hold together, and without him nothing would hold together. He gave all things life. He breathed life in from the very beginning. Let there be. That was Jesus. He made life. He sustained life. He offers eternal life. It is so intrinsically who he is that he just calls himself the life. This is exactly what God has done when he has said, God is love. Love is so intrinsically connected to all the attributes of God that he could in essence say he is love itself. He invented this thing. He created this idea. He is the embodiment of it. This is the same thing that John does earlier in the book. He says God is light. That does not mean light is God. You don't turn the light switch on and then say, thank you, God, I can now see that chair in the dark. I'm not going to stub my toe. It's not that the light itself is God. It's that light is God in the sense that God has allowed us to see the truth. God is the embodiment of all truth. He is the place of all enlightenment, of true understanding. He is the place where people come to see what is right and what is wrong. It takes them out of the darkness of their natural, dead spiritual state. He is light itself. He is the source of coming out of darkness. God is light. Jesus had this very same phrase when he spoke to the woman at the well. God is spirit. It's not an equal sign. God is so intrinsically connected to spiritual things. The way you connect to him, understand him, hear him, meet with him. It's not a physical thing. Everything about God is spiritual. You will meet him in your heart. You will know him in your life. You will see him in a spiritual sense. You're going to connect with him on a spiritual level. So in essence, God is so in another world, not physical. God is in essence all of spirituality. He is spirit. This is the definition of who God is. So when we say God is love, we are talking about not one attribute, not one aspect of God, but all of God. People love to pick and choose one little part of God and declare that to be true of God. God, to use a theological term that sounds disparaging, God is a simple being. This is a theology lesson that comes free of charge and is slightly off the text, but it's good for you to know this. We would call God a simple being. That's not, as I say, a criticism or a disparaging word. That is, it's in essence who God is. What we mean is, God is not made up of parts. He is not one part omniscient, one part all-powerful, one part love, one part grace, one part mercy. No, he is all parts of all of those things all at once. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. He is a simple being. So when you tug at the string of any one attribute of God, you're guaranteed to pull at all the other attributes of God. So when we talk about God's holiness, his holiness is a loving holiness. It is a just holiness. It is a righteous holiness. It is omniscient holiness. When you tug at God's mercy, you begin to see that his mercy is loving mercy. It is just mercy. It is sovereign mercy. All of every part of God's attributes are found in every one of his other attributes. So when we say God is love, we just mean all of his attributes are encompassed in that one attribute. Everything about God responds in love. His wrath is in love. His justice is in love. His mercy is in love. His sovereignty is love. His all-knowing is in love. His omniscience, his omnipresence is in love. His being all-powerful, he responds in love. His love restrains him from destroying sinful humanity. His love constrains all that he is. It doesn't override these things, but this is what we mean when we say God is love. This is why people have a problem when they look at the world around them. They say Spain had its Inquisition, Britain had its slave trade, Germany had its gas chambers, Russia had its Siberian labor camps. We have children born with birth defects. We have diseases and bacteria that could take your life. If God is a God of love, why doesn't he do something about this? Well, we have now selected an attribute of God out of all of his other attributes and expect him to behave in a way that I think human love should behave. I think in human love, God is obligated to do something against all these evil things. And when we begin to think like that, we have stripped God of all of his other attributes. We've cherry-picked one aspect of God's character, and we're demanding that of him. This is what people do oftentimes when we begin to hear about God's justice or God's sovereignty or God's perfect wrath against sin, and people want to say, well, my God is a God of love. As if to say, we can now extract this attribute of his and it overrides all the other ones. It never does. It never can. And all of these things have happened in history. Why? I don't know. But God is sovereign, God is just, God is merciful, and God has allowed this in his own free choice to run the universe as he sees fit. And he's not asking for our opinion to hold him against some human standard of what we think love is. God is love on his terms. What does this mean? How does God now define this love that is not human love, that must be exhibited in our lives to prove that we know him? What does it look like? In this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only Son into the world that we might live through him. There's three words that I want you to just hold on to, and we're going to look at this text a little bit more in depth. It's the word manifest, it's the word sent, and it's the word only. Just bear with me. Manifest, sent, and only. The word manifest, not that you need the Greek word, but there it is. It means to reveal something that was previously hidden or unknown. That's the essence of this Greek word. This manifest means to show something that was never previously demonstrated. To send, it's where we get the same word, by the way, the same root word here is apostello. It's where we get our word apostle from. It means sent one. It means just literally that, to send, but it has a connotation about it. It means to commission or to send an official authoritative representative for a specific task. So when he's sending something, it's a diplomat on a mission. It's somebody with a specific task to do. And the word only is the word monogenes, which is used various times through John's writings, and it is the word in John 3:16, which we have often translated only begotten. And we've translated this single word, which is the word only, using the English word begotten to try to clarify that only is not just only like he's by himself, but he's begotten. What do we mean by that? We mean he's unique. He's one of a kind. It's our English way of trying to clarify that this word sets him apart in a class all by himself. The word itself is in two parts. Monos means of a class, of a category, if you will. And genos means the only one of its kind. And the ultimate meaning of this is that the one and only, there is no one like Jesus. He is the only one of a kind. No one could do what he did. No one can be like he was. He is something above all else. He is unique. That's the essence of the word. So, with those three words in mind, let's go back to this verse that we just read, and let's pull apart what John is really saying while he's saying this. In this is love. Here's John's definition of how we see what love looks like. What does God's love look like? Is it just human emotion? Is it feeling nice towards somebody? In this is love. In this the love of God was made manifest among us, having been revealed in a manner that nobody had seen before. This is a brand new idea that God sent or commissioned his official, authoritative representative for a specific task, his only unique, one-of-a-kind Son, into the world that we might live through him. Do you want to know God's definition of love? There it is. It has nothing to do with being kind to your neighbor. It has nothing to do with it may ultimately play out that way, but in your mind, understand this, that the root of God's love is based in his actions towards his enemy. that God chose to respond to his enemies in a way that they did not deserve to be responded to. That God revealed something of himself. There was an aspect of God's love that had never been seen before. It was revealed for the very first time by sending a commissioner, by sending a representative, an authoritative representative who represented God himself, the Son, the one-of-a-kind Son. And he came into the world so that we would have life. This is how God showed his love. He responded by doing something to his enemies. In this is love. Not that we have loved God, because we never would have loved God. I don't know how well you know your own heart, but the truth of the matter is, according to the Bible, you are born as an enemy of God, in sworn allegiance to be defiant, to be on your own, to be a captain of your own soul. Oh, sure, you may give him some corner of your brain, some little teeny part of your life, some half-baked idea, and allow him whatever, but to really have a true love for him, to desire to serve him, to obey him, you were born in hatred of God. True, ultimate hatred. You never would have loved God. And let me tell you this, if you have any true love for God this morning, it is only because God himself has put that love in your heart. If you have any desire to serve him, to see his kingdom built, to love his word, to understand him, to draw closer to him, to know him in your life, if you have any hunger at all for truth and righteousness, there is only one reason for that. Because God loved you and allowed you to the Son. The only reason you know God is because God loved you first. Because you never would have taken a step in your rebellion towards God. In this is love. Not that we loved God, but that he loved us. And he sent his Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Fantastic word, propitiation. We'll not go into that. In our time restraints this morning, I've rambled on enough as it is. Propitiation is a word that means atoning sacrifice, or to use another way, a sacrifice that satisfies the need for justice. So if you're in a courtroom, it's a courtroom setting, it's a legal term. And the judge says, this is what you have to pay. You can't pay it. Somebody else pays it for you. It satisfies the need for the law to be paid. And in this case, it was to satisfy the wrath of God, the perfect justice of God to respond to the sin, to your rebellion. He sent his Son to be the means by which you could know peace with God. This is love. Not that you would ever love God, but that God, in his mercy, chose to do something to people who would always hate him, who would always despise him, who would always reject him, and in spite of that, he came to do something so that they could be saved, so that this could be changed, so they could be reconciled to their Creator. This is how love looks. This is what God is like. So, not only is love the true source from God, it not only demonstrates our true connection to God, but it reflects the sacrificial love that God has for us. It reflects the sacrificial forgiveness of God. And herein lies what love should look like in our lives. Love, on a biblical term, is sacrificial love. It's not love on your own terms. It's not love when it's convenient. It's sacrificial love. It's love regardless of the other person's response to you. It's love that doesn't hold a grudge. It's love that seeks forgiveness of that person that you've wronged or that has wronged you. It's love that goes the second mile. It's love that is not natural love, because this is not normal behavior. Because we want to hold grudges. It makes sense to us to hold a list. It makes sense to us to look for justice for that person for what they've done. They don't deserve forgiveness. They don't need this better. You've got all the list of all the things your husband's done from the last 22 years of marriage. You know them all, that he didn't do this and he didn't do that and he should have done this and he could have done that. Why? Because you know natural love that wants to only love with conditions. But God's love goes beyond that. And the proof that you are his is borne out in the fact that you are willing to go, in Jesus' words, that second mile. You're going to do something that nobody else does. You're going to forgive them. This strikes at the heart of who we need to be. This speaks to the husband here this morning who needs to confess to their wife that they are not being a loving husband because they are loving for selfish reasons. I only love you for what you give me. I only love you on my own terms. Sure, I love you, but not with sacrificial love. This goes to the wife who doesn't treat her husband with respect because he doesn't do what I think you should do, and you're not behaving how I think. Love goes the second mile. This is to the child who is living in rebellion against their parents, who decides that they can live on their own terms because they know better than their father and know better than their mother. Sacrificial love submits. It goes beyond that. It recognizes that God has given authority in my life. This sacrificial love goes to the father who teaches their children how to be bombastic and rude and harsh and mean by the way that they discipline and the way that they father. It goes to the father who needs to sit down with their children and say, I've been wrong in the way I fathered you. I've been wrong in the way I've abused my authority. I've not loved you the way I should. This is a very practical love. This is the love of God found within the church. Jesus said it this way. You've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. It's not that doing this makes you a son of your Father, but doing this is pure, unadulterated evidence that you are a son of your Father, because this is the very nature of a Christian who's been transformed by the Spirit of God. This is how you're going to respond in love. You're going to do something that is not natural. You're going to love with a supernatural love, that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and the good, sends rain on the just and the unjust. What does that mean? Everybody gets sunshine. Everybody gets rain. Everybody gets a family to love. Everybody gets, children to love. Everybody knows what love is on some level. Everybody gets something. This is called common grace. God is good to everybody. If you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Anybody can just love, just on a surface love, get along with people and do nice things for people. Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing? Don't even the Gentiles do that? I mean, anybody can just love in a nice way and be kind and be friendly and be happy and bake a pie for your neighbor and shovel their driveway, which I'm still waiting for you to do. I mean, anybody can do these things. But this is a call to love the second mile. This is a call to go beyond that. This is a call for sacrificial love. Love like you've never seen before. Beloved, if God so loved us, when we were enemies, when we were against God, the very people who hated him, he came and lived among them, and they hated on him and killed him. And he did it out of love. If God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. This little word ought, great word. Ought. It's not if it suits you, no, it just ought. It's not, when it fits in your schedule and how it works for you and your personality. No, we just ought. It's a moral obligation. It is a genuine response. It is the natural outflow. If he loved us like that, then we're going to do that back. I mean, it's just a natural thing. It is the same thing in my mind as I was thinking about this week, that if you build a fire, what is the natural response of fire? A fire ought to be hot. It can't not be hot. A Christian ought to respond in love. It's just the natural response. It may not be your first response. It may not be that you're good at it, but it ought to happen because this is how we have been changed. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. No one has seen God until you love someone like this, and suddenly you are manifesting the very presence of God in your life and in this act. No one has ever seen God. If we love one another, God abides in us, and his love is perfected in us. This word perfected, same root that Jesus spoke when he was on the cross. His last word was on the cross, tetelestai. It is finished. It means to be completed, to be whole, to be perfected, to be nothing can be added to it, to be to the nth degree excellent. And his love is made completely full in us. Nothing else can be added to it. It is a perfect love. Not that it's perfect in the sense that a human perfection is better than something else. It's just that you can't get better than this kind of love. It is the quintessential mark of true love, to respond even to your enemies in love. So this morning, we see why love. God is the source of true love and demonstrates your true connection with God. It reflects the sacrificial love that God has for us. It reflects the forgiveness that God has for us. It makes the love of God, it makes the invisible God visible when we respond in this kind of love. God is present in this moment. This kind of love cannot be improved upon. It is perfected love, and it is a love that the church has, not must have. She has it, or she's not the church. And this is how we must live out our lives before those who call themselves unbelievers, with those we rub our shoulders with those we work with those in our family. We love to the second mile, with sacrifice, with forgiveness, with a genuine response, because this is how Christ loved us. This is the book of 1 John.